In late October 2009, a small community radio station called KZYX, tucked away on the fog-drenched outskirts of Fort Bragg, California, recorded something that would haunt its staff for years to come. An intern on an overnight shift had accidentally left a reel-to-reel tape recorder running, capturing a brief, garbled transmission on a frequency the station never broadcasted on. The recording lasted only 6 seconds, distorted by static, but it contained a woman's voice, faint, breathless, and terrified. "Mill Creek. Please. Can't see. He's out there. Run," the voice stammered, breaking off mid-sentence. Nobody knew who she was or where Mill Creek was exactly. The name didn't appear on any modern maps near Fort Bragg, and attempts to trace the signal's origin failed. The sheriff's department dismissed it as radio interference or a prank. But the voice lingered in the minds of those who heard it. A whisper caught on the wind, impossibly close, yet unreachable. 5 years later, journalist Laura Ramirez decided to find out what had happened. Laura was a woman drawn to mysteries, the kind that clung to forgotten places, where nature slowly reclaimed old wounds. She arrived in Fort Bragg on a cool, damp morning in October 2014, the salty Pacific mist blurring the edges of the cliffs. The coastal redwood stood sentinel behind the town, tall and ancient, whispering secrets in the wind. Laura met with Bob Chan, the former engineer at KZYX, who had preserved the tape. Bob was gaunt, weathered, his hands shaking slightly as he rewound the reel and played the fragment again. He told Laura how staff had heard strange noises in the building at night. Footsteps on creaky stairs, distant knocks, whispers that faded whenever anyone tried to listen closer. Together with 2 locals, Miles Bennett, a freelance investigator familiar with the area's history, and Aisha Patel, an amateur historian obsessed with the old logging camps of Mendocino County, they set out to locate Mill Creek, hoping to uncover the truth. The search led them into the Stanwood State Forest, a tangled wilderness of firs and cedars, draped in moss and cloaked in fog. Maps from the 1930s showed a Mill Creek logging camp deep in the forest, abandoned after a series of disappearances in the 1950s. The camp had been a small cluster of cabins, a radio shack, and a bunkhouse, a working site for timber harvesters until it was shut down suddenly for reasons never officially explained. The locals whispered stories, strange lights seen at night, shadows moving between trees, eerie moaning that the wind carried down the creeks. Some believed the forest was cursed or haunted by something that drove the loggers away. The team approached the site at dawn, the forest eerily silent save for distant crows. They followed an overgrown trail, marked only by rusted equipment, half swallowed by ivy and rotting leaves. They found the remains of the camp, collapsed wooden cabins, shattered glass, a broken radio antenna leaning crookedly. Inside the bunker, rusted tools lay scattered, and the stale air smelled of damp earth and decay. Among the wreckage, Miles discovered carvings on tree trunks, crude symbols and dates etched deep into the bark, alongside initials and cryptic messages like "He watches and don't look." As night fell, the group camped near the creek. The forest closed in around them, the canopy swallowing the fading light. Strange noises whispered through the trees, branches cracking, a soft dragging sound, something too rhythmic to be a falling leaf. The air grew heavy with an unseen presence. Laura felt watched. At one point, she glimpsed a figure just beyond the firelight, pale, motionless, then gone when she blinked. Throughout the night, the radio crackled faintly, as if trying to pick up a signal. The team recorded fragments of static, interspersed with the same garbled voice from the original tape, sometimes clearer, sometimes fading into indecipherable whispers. The next morning, the group found footprints circling their camp, but no one else was around. Their equipment malfunctioned inexplicably. Batteries drained, cameras failed, and in the creek, downstream, a torn piece of fabric stained with dried blood was discovered. Haunted and exhausted, they returned to Fort Bragg. Laura submitted her findings to the local sheriff, but official interest was minimal. No missing persons had been reported in the area in recent decades. No records explained the sudden abandonment of Mill Creek Camp or the disappearances in the 1950s. The voice on the tape remained a chilling enigma, a desperate plea caught between time and silence. Months later, Laura received a package with no return address, an old, weathered notebook belonging to a logger named Frank Miller, who had worked at Mill Creek in 1955. The entries detailed his growing fear, strange sounds, equipment sabotage, and the feeling of being stalked by something unseen. His final entry ended mid-sentence. "They're outside the bunkhouse window. I can't." Laura's research ended there. Frank Miller was never found. Neither were the other missing workers. Today, the forest reclaims Mill Creek. The logging camp is lost beneath moss and fog. The radio tower rusts in silence, but some nights, hikers swear they hear a faint voice, carried on the wind, begging for help, lost forever in the dark. The tape remains archived at KZYX. The recording is available only to a handful of trusted listeners. The mystery of Mill Creek endures. A ghost in the static, a warning from the woods, and a reminder that some places are best left forgotten. If you ever find yourself near the Northern California coast, walk quietly through the redwoods. Listen for the whispers on the wind. And if you hear a voice calling from the darkness, remember, some lost souls never find their way home.